Hello and welcome to the GovCon After Hours podcast. We are super excited to be here in September of 2025. We have a wonderful guest with us today, Miss Cherylyn. Of course, your hosts, as always, myself, Caitlin Ruiz, and my partner in crime, Dr. Robin Desmore. But our podcast today is definitely going to hopefully get you thinking a little bit differently about GovCon and how we go after business and maybe how we make it in this kind of new world that we're in today. Our title for this one is the GovCon Martini, 1 part access, 2 parts timing, served with a twist of power. And our guest today specifically, the one that is here to teach us all, Ms. Cherylyn Harley LeBon. She's a partner and co-chair of the government contracting group at Cohen Seglias. She brings more than 25 years of powerhouse legal and government experience to this conversation. She helps her clients navigate certifications, compliance, high-stakes strategies, and she helps drive growth in this GovCon sector. And her background is equally impressive and unique. She's served as a senior counsel on the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee. She's held presidential appointments at both the SBA and the Department of Veterans Affairs and has led her own consulting firm. She helps all sorts of GovCons in various stages, but those specifically in 8A, SDVSOB, Women-Owned Small Business, and Hub Zones. And she also gives her perspective that few can match when it comes to helping those small businesses position for the bigger opportunities. And outside of that client work, she advises on mergers and acquisitions, corporate governance, and strategic planning. She's definitely a go-to voice for companies ready to scale or prepare for acquisition. And she also gives back through service on several boards, which include Visit Fairfax and the Capital Business Development Association, or CBDA, where she champions small and growing GovCon firms across the DC region. So again, I'm thrilled to welcome you, Cherylyn. Thank you for joining us today on GovCon After Hours.
I'm so excited to be with you ladies today. My pleasure.
Yes. Awesome. Yes. And hopefully we all have drinks. I have my vodka cranberry. Miss Dr. Desmore, what do you got?
Oh, I actually have just a whiskey neat.
Oh, okay.
It's that kind of day already.
I know, and it's only 3:00. It's a Monday. I was telling Caitlin, we call Mondays Triage Monday.
Oh, yeah. I would honestly and truthfully agree with 100% of that, yes. So welcome. Thank you for being here, Cherylyn. I'm going to kick this kind of off, and I'm going to ask you more specifically, especially in the GovCon area, is timing a make it or break it kind of for an opportunity? I mean, how do businesses better recognize or even act on the right timing? Now, that includes whether it's partnerships, whether it's certifications, it's anything targeting a specific agency, including, I mean, like, as much detail as you can give or kind of narrow that down where you think the timing is actually most important.
Right. So I think timing is tied to the intel that you have about the opportunity, right? So it's always important to have as much information and intel as you can about the opportunity, because then, you know, the intel drives all of these other factors. It drives the type of partner you want to go after. It drives the certifications that might be applicable or not. It drives sort of the specific, you know, the agency, you know, what are we talking about? So I always say, let's try and get as much intel as possible, because when we have the intel, then we can make more informed decisions instead of this just applying and bidding blindly, right? Because then I feel like people are just throwing darts at a board, and that's never a good strategy. So let's get our intel, let's figure out what we have to work with, and then let's decide, is a partner A, is a partner B, is a partner C? What cert is going to be applicable or not? What else do we need to know, right? And then I think once you have all that, then you can start to kind of figure out the rest, to move the pieces of the chessboard around.
Oh, it's very interesting. I think that leads us into our next question, huh, Caitlin?
Yeah, which truly is kind of in tandem with that. What's the biggest mistake that you see your GovCons make when it comes to positioning themselves for that long-term growth? And hopefully, I'm sure you do help them see not just that short-term vision, right? We're talking long-term. Let's think strategically about stuff. To your point, intel is everything. I know that in our recruiting world, well, I'm sure actually it's true for all of us, but we always say, like, when work comes out, if you don't already know who that's for, it's not you.
Correct. Thank you. Right.
So why waste our time doing whatever? Like, no, what are you doing? But to back to the true question is, I mean, what are kind of the biggest mistakes you've seen them make? And are there any lessons learned, any advice you could give them?
Yeah. So I've got about 4 points here, but the first question I ask, particularly new clients, is what are your goals? Let's just start there. What are your goals? Are your goals to sell your company in 5 years? Or is your goal to leave the company to a child, daughter, son, grandson? 2 totally different goals, okay? If you think you're going to sell in 5 years, then you better start hustling right now, okay? And that's a whole other path. If you want to perhaps, be on the legacy path and you want to leave it to a daughter or son, that's a different path. You may not be as aggressive, but these are 2 totally different paths, and you need to understand your goals. So if you come to me and I ask you, what are your goals, and you don't have an answer for me, then let's backtrack and figure that out, okay? I think some biggest mistakes I see is that you need to have a plan, and if you deviate from that plan, then that's a problem. And you got to figure out how to get back to your plan. So what happens, I think the second biggest mistake is that we deviate from the plan and we don't know how to get back to it. Doesn't matter what the plan is, you need a plan. But if you deviate from it, you better get back to it, okay? I think another problem is not investing and reinvesting in your business, okay? And that, of course, involves some, getting guidance from other people, right? Are you talking to your accountant? Are you talking to your financial advisor, your wealth advisor on tax planning? Are you talking to your banker? What do we got going on here? I can't tell you how many clients I talk to and I say, well, who's your banker? And they say Bank of America, Wells Fargo. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a strategic partner. That's what I'm talking about. Who is your strategic partner who's helping you map out where the money, your line of credit, you're not going to get paid from the government for 60 to 90 days. Okay. How are you going to make payroll? How are we planning for these things? So again, investing and reinvesting in your company. When you don't do that, I think that's another mistake. Finally, I think a mistake that I see now since January, is you got to follow the money. Great thing about our country is the budget's pretty transparent. It's laid out. You see where the budgets have increased in which agencies, where they haven't. If you are not following that's your strategic plan right there. If you are not following that plan, then you probably really should not be in the GovCon industry right now. Because it's all laid out for you. It's that the path is very clear. You need to be pivoting your business to what you see in that budget. Very simply, follow the money.
Oof. That opens up. Always follow the money. But they would all would love to know where that money is too, and that you have to have the plan and everything else. Everything you just said, Cherylyn, definitely. So, in connection with that, when you talk about small businesses, how can they use a legal expertise or a legal, representative more proactively instead of defensively?
Like call me when stuff blows up, right? Call me when stuff blows up, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. So in an all perfect world, I love to get my clients when they're starting their company, right? I love the startups because why? Well, I can get you started on a great foundation and I can work with you before all the bad habits start. So one of the things you need to have you need to have solid legal documents. You need to start with a solid NDA, solid teaming agreement, solid subcontract agreement, solid JV agreements. Then it goes from there, right? So oftentimes people come to me because there's been a weakness in one of those agreements. And that weakness has caused us to be in the situation that they're in, right? We have a subcontract that isn't as tight as it needed to be. We have a JV agreement that isn't as great as it needed to be. So in an all perfect world, Robin, to your point, I'd love to get you when you're starting out, and then I can make sure and ensure that you've got these great foundational documents so that we can help mitigate any problems in the future, right? And that is what every small business owner and small business should have, a great foundation. And that also starts with, if you have a couple partners, right? That operating agreement or that shareholder agreement, that really should be strong. It should be intact. It should survive a business divorce, right? All those types of things that we want, again, to mitigate problems in the future. And again, we often see problems because we have documents that aren't as strong as they need to be.
Is that, would you say, the biggest thing? Like, what's the number one thing that they do wrong the most often? Like, what lends or takes a GovCon down that path? Is it usually just their documents that you're
it's documents. It might be a misjudgment along the way. It might be a poor partner. It might be a poor sub who gets them in trouble with the government client. It might be an employee that's off the rails, right? That ends up in an unfortunate lawsuit. It could be any number of things. But again, when I'm starting with a client, I want to first look at their documents. I'm going to ask a whole host of questions, but I do want to look at their documents, right? I want to ask things like, who's your accountant, right? Because again, in this space, we don't want your uncle or your dad's friend that you've known for 30 years that's a great guy, but he doesn't know the GovCon industry. And again, you may have a large bank, but you need a strategic partner that's going to help your business grow and be with you right there in the trenches with you. It just may not be a large bank. So it's kind of a holistic look at things, Caitlin, to your point. It's the legal side, it's the business side, it's all of these other factors that really help a company build that strong foundation so that they can scale, so that they can grow. But you need all these little pieces in place.
That's excellent. I'm thinking hard about this, not more so because as a small business, as Caitlin and I are both small businesses and stuff like that, we have a lot of people who have.
And I do too. I have a small business, right? I have my practice is within a large firm, right?
Right. Yeah. But it's always, unexpected things that you don't expect to happen and whatever that wind up coming out. But if you could advise a GovCon company, just, obviously we're focused more on the small businesses because it's near and dearest to our hearts, but that wants to be, all of the things you're saying is putting it all in perspective and putting them all in place. But, what if they do want to get an acquisition in a few years? What does that look like? What are the foundational steps? I think you've been laying that out quite clearly at this particular point in time. But, there's been a lot of M&A activity. I can tell you, have lots of conversations going on with various clients about whatever it may be. But how do you get that and, finding and increasing the value, but also their attractiveness as to the buyers? Like, what does it look like? And I know financials are always going to be at are you making money or not making money? But what else do you think could be a really good setup for them for an acquisition?
Yeah. So it goes back to my original question of when I meet clients and I say, what are your goals, right? So, what have you been doing for the past 5 years? Have you been hustling? Because to me, hustling looks like you have increased your value. And how have you done that? You're on profitable contracts and profitable contract vehicles. And I should see a pipeline that's pretty robust, right? You should be long contracts, good pipeline. That's what buyers want to see, okay? I also think having good employees is important. I don't want to see a whole lot of claims, okay? I don't want to see that. I think you should have good company culture because you should expect that, the seller, may want to be a part of the company for transition. Typically, it's 1 to 2 years, right? I specialize in GovCon M&A, do quite a few transactions. Typically, the seller wants to be a part of it for 1 to 2 years, and oftentimes, the buyer wants them to be a part of it, right? Because it could be the relationship on the contracts. I mean, we know GovCon is relationship based, right? So, the buyer is going to want to see some good employees and a good company culture, right? The other thing I advise is you better clean up your house. So on due diligence, I don't want to see these extraneous issues. I want to see claims here and there. I'm going to do a lien search. I find that, sometimes when you do a lien search and then you say to the seller, this is what came up. They sometimes artfully forget. So I would say, let's clean up your house. I want to see the house cleaned up before you go to market. All right. And you should be able to, I expect the seller to be able to know everything about that business so that when questions come up in due diligence, I shouldn't see a strange face, okay, a confused face. This is your business. I expect you to know everything, and I expect you to be transparent on what may come up in due diligence, because nobody likes surprises in due diligence. No one does.
But this is going to lead me on to a secondary question, because one of the things that continuously comes up, and we all believe that what we have is, valuable in whatever particular situation. Valuations on small businesses seems to be,
it can be controversial at times, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And here's the other thing. I mean, I've been through this so many times. It's really great when you can find someone who does your valuation who understands professional services, okay? Because you get people who do these valuations that don't really understand professional services, and maybe they're used to doing manufacturing or they're used to doing restaurants, whatever it is, but they're not used to doing professional services. So you need to find someone who not only understands professional services, but preferably understands GovCon too, okay? Because, and then also too, that valuation, some people automatically say you need to do 3. I don't know if you need to do 3, but I'd be happy if you just found someone who understands the GovCon industry and knows how to value the contracts and the pipelines. If we could get someone who can do that, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah. There seems to be a hodgepodge, right? Because that's a unique skill set that's in the industry as well. But some do parts of that really well, and some do other parts, and without spending more than what your company's worth to actually get a valuation that is consistent, mindful, but also it shows all the cards in many aspects of it, right? Because that's what they're trying to get to. Yeah.
And if you're going to market, you need a proper valuation done.
Yes,
Not the back
absolutely.
of the envelope that your accountant's doing. Okay, you need a proper one by a professional that really knows how to appropriately value those contracts. GWACs, IDIQ, the whole thing, right? And again, to your point, Robin, that's a specific skill set. So it's worth it to go and find someone with that skill set, or else,
it's a hard network. I mean, we're all, as 3 women, we are really well connected in many aspects, but it's still hard to find because everybody's business is unique and different based off of who they are and what they are. But to have somebody come in and say, oh, it's worth X, and you're like, wait a minute, clearly you see the value that's coming out of my contracts. How do you value it at this? And they're like, well, the industry is trending down, or the industry and the money, that's not where the money's at or going to, there's this whole, interesting formula. I should say it like that, because I don't know that everybody's consistent with how they're doing it. It's just
correct. That is also a problem.
Yes.
and the diversity in the price,
Yes.
some charge 20,000, some charge 10.
Yes.
It's really just,
and you don't know what you're getting either until you get it, right? Because they don't always tell you, and they won't give you necessarily examples or samples or whatever it may be. Like, can you just show me what you're talking about? Now, I know everybody's afraid that that's their special sauce, right? Don't give me, no. The special sauce we have to protect that. But you go, how do I know that I'm getting what I need? I'm asking for apples. Are you giving me an apple, or are you giving me an orange? Or are you giving me some hybrid of something else that is not actual? And then if you ask for two or more, then you're spending,
you are spending, right. Because, I've had situations where, we've got one evaluation and it just didn't make sense. We're asking, if we're asking all these questions about it, that tends to be problematic, right? If I look at a valuation and my client looks at the valuation, we're scratching our head like, well, what about this? And did you include this? We've got problems. And then often that means we're going to have to go with another one. And then we're spending more money. And before you know it, the clients put out 35, 40 grand to get a decent valuation that we feel that is accurate and reflects the value of the company and the contracts and the contract vehicles, right?
Yeah, because everything you talked about earlier, all the people, the culture, the longevity, and the relationships, they're all a part of that valuation, right?
Yep.
If it's not, you're just buying a contract at that point, right? You're not actually buying a company. So yeah, agreed.
Exactly. And the other thing is, in fact, I just came back from, I was in Detroit leading an M&A workshop with business owners from all over the country. And there was a couple of things I said in the speech and then in the workshop later. And I said, listen, transactions are very emotional and personal. But you have to be able to walk away from them. It's the hardest thing I have to tell clients. That they're like, I really want this company. I really want it. The hardest thing may be you may have to walk away. Because it just may not work out. And it may not necessarily be the numbers. It could be all of a sudden the seller's going through a divorce. Or the seller has had some other unfortunate thing happen. Just, life happens. And so you can't get too attached to this company because it just may not work out.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly.
Right? And it may not be the numbers. It may not be a business reason. It just may be something that comes out of left field. So you just have to be prepared that this just may not happen. Unfortunately, right?
One of my favorite sayings just in life in general is, because this is true, most of us, we have good plans. We have good boundaries. We did good research. We did all the stuff, but then we get fucked up in our feelings, right? So my favorite line ever is, fuck your feelings, follow the plan. Fuck your feelings. Feelings don't matter. They're irrelevant here because it's so hard. To your point, there is that emotional piece of it, and you get easily derailed and you can justify it till the cows come home, right? Like, I want to go right ahead, but yeah. Fuck your feelings, follow the plan.
I've seen all sorts of transactions go south for a variety of reasons. And sometimes it's just simple as, transactions are also like two people going to the altar. And then sometimes everybody gets cold feet for whatever reason. But that truly happens, that you start to question everything. So, transactions are a lot of hand-holding. It's a lot of hand-holding. And you really need, as a lawyer, to have the right temperament because you don't know what hat you're wearing on a particular day. It may be the priest. It may be the therapist. It may be the transactional lawyer. It may be the cop because you're sort of, trying to, calm down two sides. You don't know what you're dealing with, but you have to be able to go in and out and wear different hats because you will have the gamut of feelings in a transaction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Believe it.
Are there, I was just sitting around thinking about like we know a ton of lifestyle businesses, right? A ton of these GovCons that are not hustling, that are not whatever. And that's fine. Do you, right? Like
that's what I said. You
Yep.
know, and I tell this is why I ask my clients from the very beginning, new clients, I say, what are your goals? You want to sell in 5 years? Because that's one path. Or we're chilling and we're leaving it as a legacy. We're leaving it for our daughter and son. You do you. I'm here to support you either way. But I also want to be super clear that these are two different paths. So in 5 years, you know, when you think you're ready to sell and you have not been hustling, then I'm saying, well, what's in the pipeline? What are we selling? What you got? What are we selling? Because remember, 5 years ago, you told me that you wanted to sell in 5 years, and I'm not seeing that you're ready to sell. So I'm not seeing a pipeline. I'm not seeing profitable long-term profitable contract vehicles. So my question is, what are we selling?
Yep. Do any of them ever make that switch though? Do any of them get it together and go from lifestyle to true GovCon like business and sell? I don't think I've ever seen that. I mean, I've seen successful lifestyle business that just kind of stay there, to your point,
Right.
and then the hustles that do the other thing and grow and all that. But I don't think I've ever seen one switch.
So they haven't switched on my watch. They haven't switched on my watch. And if they've switched, it's because there was an event that made them switch. Okay. That tends to be why they switch. Like the on button goes on because they were backed into the corner like a mouse.
Yep. I
They
recently had that.
Contract.
Yes.
There's some sort of event that forced them into the corner and they had to switch.
Okay.
Right.
And is there anything when you think about your own clients and maybe some success stories are really cool, like finally made it, they pivoted, they got it together, all their stuff was good, they ended up selling. Like, what separates the ones that make it like that from the ones that don't? Is there anything you can just like, they were, I don't know.
Every transaction is so different, right? But, it's the ones that I will say are purposeful. Are really purposeful and say, okay, maybe like 5 years ago, they say, listen, I'm going to get an FCL. I mean, there are certain things you can do to make yourself profitable and whatnot. And they're like, I'm going to get on these certain contract vehicles. I'm going to get on these long-term contracts. I'm going to get an IC. I'm going to be all DOD. And they know where to go in order to be profitable. And we saw this, in the past, since January, there were certain agencies that we knew before January that were going to be on the chopping block. So if you knew you were doing business in those agencies, Ed, HHS, you should have known you're going to be in for some tough times, right? Because things weren't, nobody was being secretive about what was coming. It was very clear. So it's that type of thing where, you kind of got to see the writing on the wall. And I think, as our industry has been kind of turned upside down to some degree. And I'm seeing definite pivots and a change in thinking in a lot of my clients. Some that, for example, would have never considered doing state and local are now looking at state and local, right? Some are now looking at getting those FCLs, right? And looking around to find sponsors. Pivoting to work that they hadn't previously thought of because things have changed, right? Things have changed. This is probably the first time I think I've seen in my time in Washington, D.C., where you've seen such a major change and shift in our industry, in the GovCon sector, right? So I think it has really put people on alert and really force them to make some hard decisions about the direction of their company, right? and what's going to be necessary to survive and thrive in this sector. Not just survive, but thrive as well.
Yes, definitely. The resilience is important too. You got to learn those pivots in order to stay alive and to either come out better or be able to sustain it throughout I'll call it the storm. Yes.
Correct.
Amen. Yes. I think I think for the most part, we've talked about the acquisition stuff as well as any of the increase in the value and attractiveness to buyers. Mm-hmm. Is there any last thoughts you have, Cherylyn? Because from my standpoint, these are really important questions. Like I said, it's been been a very busy 6 months of M&A stuff going on, conversations, opportunities, let me find out some more information. So do you have anything that you would recommend, I guess, to our audience?
I say, listen, again, these are, I think safely I could say these are times we haven't seen before. And people have some hard decisions to make, right? Whether you're going to survive or thrive or whether you're going to pivot to maybe more commercial work. But, there are resources out there to help you pivot and help you do what you need to do. And remember, the federal budget didn't decrease, it increased. So there's money there. On the positive side, there's money there. You need to decide whether you want to go after that money or not, because it's there and there's more of it. So I think, anybody is as good to go after it as the next person. And if you decide to stay in this industry and work it and thrive, then the footprint, the strategic plan is there for you. Go after it. That's what America's all about. Go after it. Build that business, scale your company, because the path is there for you. You can decide you want it or not.
Yeah,
awesome.
I think that's a good one.
I think so too.
Just to kind of put a bow on it and wrap it up even further, we love to kind of close all of our episodes by asking our guests, is there anything that isn't being talked about that you want to talk about? And that could be on topic with what we had tonight or something totally left, anything in GovCon or your field, a candid, hey, I see this shit happen and no one talks about it.
The FAR rewrite. I'm not happy about the FAR rewrite.
Okay.
I'm not happy about it. I am concerned for small businesses. I have engaged and signed on to all the letters that are out there. I've sent them to all my clients. I've spent, I would say, 30 years of my career supporting and championing small businesses, because I do believe that small businesses are the backbone of this economy. I don't think the large companies are. Small businesses are that employ most of Americans. So if we're going to rewrite this FAR and backdoor large businesses, because that's what they're doing, I don't like it. And I'm not going to be quiet about it. I think this is a big problem. And I think every small business needs to become an advocate, needs to talk to their congressmen and women and their senators and not be quiet about this. We just simply cannot roll over on this. I don't like it at all, and we need to do what we can to change it. Period.
That's a good one that nobody's talking about. People are talking about it, but maybe probably in an off-scale way, not necessarily directly in a head-on. Just like, what does this mean to the small businesses? Because it's some parts of the industry is very cyclical, right? It's small businesses, then it's not. Then it's the small businesses, and then it's not, right? And this is one of those opportunities where instead of keeping it where a small business can grow and thrive, as we've been talking about, this is a place where it could actually hurt us even further.
Correct.
Without actually allowing us to get the feet. So we can have all of these great conversations about what we can do to build it and grow it and even sell it. But if they're putting in the FAR overhaul is changing how small businesses actually compete. Right. We can't compete with large businesses, and it's absolutely known.
No.
So why are you mandating a CMMC for everybody? And it costs $100,000 to get that stuff implemented, and it costs $50,000 to maintain it. And you go,
Correct.
but I'm not even making $50,000 at all throughout the year. So how do we do that? And, you've just put a lot more emphasis on certain things that my business needs to do now on top of it. What's the priority? And the lifestyle businesses, I think, may become more prevalent because the selling opportunities, unless you have, certain products or a very type of industry line, software developers and stuff like that, it's going to be harder and harder. Professional services is necessary and important to how we grow, but I agree wholeheartedly. I think we're not talking about it enough, and people send it to me and they go, "What do you think?" We don't have that kind of time right now. We could talk about this for the rest of the day, about just that and how it impacts and why it impacts and where it's being wrong. And everybody just has their own different perspective about what they're trying to do and what they're trying to achieve, which again isn't written clearly at all.
No, it's not. And also too, the way that this has been rewritten, it's basically, in a back room with very little, limited, I would say, input from the public, all done by design. There's really no way to rewrite something that hasn't been rewritten since 1984. I mean, it's a pretty big deal. So I don't know what to do, really. I've talked to enough people about it. I've talked to people in Capitol Hill and leadership, and I'm not really getting, a whole lot of feedback or guidance. And then hence, this is why you've seen all of the small business initiatives, the bills being introduced in Congress. I don't know the likelihood of any of them being passed, but there's enough stuff floating around that we know what the issues are and that people are concerned. I don't know if it's enough to get us, right?
To the next stage. Yeah.
And whether that's really going to influence what we see coming out in October of the FAR. If in fact they're still on target to have it all done in October. I don't know whether it will all be done by then. That was an ambitious date, I thought. But let's see what we've got when they're finished.
Yep, I agree.
I'm super enthused.
Yeah, because it's going to take us how long to interpret it all anyways, right? Once you get it, you have to figure out how to interpret it and apply it.
And then think about it. The contracting officers have to figure it out.
And we already know how hard that is, right? To get them to change their mind and perspective.
I mean, that's a whole educational process too. Mm-hmm. And remember, we've lost so many people that, had the SMEs and had 30 years in government. Now we've got new people coming in with obviously a lot less expertise and experience. And then you're going to put a new FAR in for them to have to learn and interpret. I mean, this is utter chaos, to be honest with you, utter chaos.
We agree wholeheartedly on that one.
Yep. And while we may not have a solution, at least we can do one thing, which is not be quiet. Make all the noise. Talk about it, right? Absolutely. Yep. Be loud, man. Take up space everywhere you go, all day. But with that, we're all concluded here on our GovCon After Hours podcast. It was a pleasure, Cherylyn. Thank you.
It was so fun. Thank you, ladies. It was so fun being with you.
Awesome. And if you guys liked what you heard today, we would love for you to like and subscribe to our podcast so you can get more of this candor coming your way. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Ladies.
Take care.